In the early hours of November 18, 2018, Odin Jacobsen, 18 years old, bright, healthy, and by all accounts content with life, walked alone through downtown Trondheim. Surveillance footage caught him heading toward the harbour just after 6 a.m. Then he vanished. 12 days later, his phone and ID were found hidden by a pier. Months after that, some of his clothes turned up burned beside a remote lake. Despite years of investigation, no trace of Odin has ever been found. No crime scene, no confession, no body. Welcome to Bad Things. Join us as we walk through the disappearance of Odin Jacobsen and try to understand what most likely happened. Do you want to bring bad things with you wherever you go? Our episodes are now available as a podcast. Look us up on your favorite podcast app and listen to the most truth-seeking true crime podcast out there. Timeline. On the night of Saturday, November 17, 2018, 18-year-old Odin Jacobsen travelled from his home in Skaun to Trondheim to spend the evening with friends. After attending a party, Odin and 5 other men checked into the Comfort Hotel in the city centre around 1 a.m. The group stayed in a shared room, reportedly drinking and watching TV until the early morning hours. At approximately 5 a.m. on Sunday, November 18th, the group checked out. According to the others, they each went their separate ways. Odin, they said, was heading to catch a bus back to Skaun, though they were likely unaware that the first bus wouldn't leave for several more hours. After parting, Odin began walking alone through Trondheim. Over the next hour, CCTV cameras captured Odin wandering the city centre multiple times, seemingly without a clear destination. At 5:35 a.m., footage showed him suddenly sprinting mid-step, only to slow again shortly after. A moment later cited often for its unusualness. By 5:49 a.m., Odin was seen walking along Fjordgata, heading toward the Bratara harbour. The final confirmed image came at 6:01 a.m., showing him near a set of shipping containers at the far end of Pier 11, close to the water. From that moment on, Odin Jacobsen was never seen again. By the afternoon of November 18th, when he failed to return home or respond to calls, Odin was reported missing. Police initiated a wide-ranging search involving helicopters, divers, and canine units. Attention quickly focused on the harbour, and the Nidelva River and the Trondheims Fjord became central to early hypotheses. 12 days later, on December 1st, a passerby discovered a small cache of Odin's personal belongings, including his phone, passport, bank card, and bus card, concealed behind a warehouse wall at the far end of the pier. The items were dry and carefully stacked, suggesting intentional placement. The following day, more of Odin's things were found nearby. A bag containing clothes, a hat, and one of his shoes, located near a white container. His other shoe was found soon after by a family member helping with the search. Police noted that the spot where Odin's clothes were found was precisely where he had been seen on CCTV at 6:01 a.m., suggesting he placed them there himself. Despite repeated underwater searches and public appeals, no trace of Odin was found in the water. Then in April 19, a hiker near Jonsvatnet Lake, roughly 20 kilometers away, came across burned belongings later confirmed to be Odin's. This discovery led police to consider possible foul play. That lead intensified in 2020 when a tip on the TV program Åsted Norge helped identify a 46-year-old man who had been seen on surveillance footage driving a white station wagon near the harbour hours after Odin vanished. Under questioning, he admitted to collecting Odin's belongings and burning them at Jonsvatnet, claiming he panicked after seeing the missing persons case in the media. He denied knowing Odin and was never charged with causing his disappearance. In November 2021, 3 years after Odin vanished, police announced that no evidence had emerged to confirm any criminal act. By January 2023, the investigation was officially shelved, with the presumption that Odin was deceased, most likely having ended up in the water, either by accident or by choice. As of October 2025, Odin Jacobsen remains missing. The case remains closed unless new evidence emerges. Theories. In the years following Odin Jacobsen's disappearance, a number of possible explanations have been explored, some by official investigators, others by journalists, online communities, and members of the public. The 6 most prominent theories fall into distinct categories, each built around a different interpretation of the available facts. Here we present these theories as they've been discussed, without presuming which, if any, comes closest to the truth. Number 1. Fatal accident near the water. The explanation most frequently cited by police and search professionals is also the simplest, that Odin may have suffered a fatal accident near the edge of Trondheim's harbour, possibly slipping into the water and drowning. The Brattøra waterfront, especially in November, presents significant dangers. At certain points along the pier, there are no safety rails. The surface can be slick with ice or moisture, and the lighting is minimal before sunrise. If Odin misjudged his footing, the drop to the fjord is abrupt. Water temperatures at that time of year can cause cold shock in under a minute. This theory does not rely on any malicious act. Rather, it assumes that Odin, for reasons unknown, ventured to the edge of the pier and fell in. If this occurred, hypothermia would have set in rapidly, limiting his ability to call for help or swim back. Strong currents or the weight of clothing could have pulled him under. The possibility that he became unconscious before or during entry into the water has also been discussed, though without forensic evidence that remains hypothetical. Police reinforced this possibility in their formal statement when the case was shelved in 2023, stating that the most likely scenario was that Odin ended up in the sea, either through his own actions or due to an accident, and not as a result of a punishable act. Not everyone accepted this explanation. Odin's father, Dan Jacobsen, expressed sharp skepticism about the drowning theory. If he had fallen into the water, I believe he would have swum out, he said in one interview. Odin was a strong swimmer. We used to joke he was more comfortable in water than on land. He added, there was no sign of a fall, no splash heard, and none of his clothing washed up. If he had gone into the water there, something should have shown up. Supporters of the accident theory point to the lack of other viable evidence. Critics point to the precision with which Odin's belongings were stashed, something they feel doesn't square with a sudden mishap. Number 2. Drug-induced delirium leading to misadventure. A separate but related theory focuses not just on Odin's location that morning, but on his state of mind. Based on later witness statements and reporting, some now believe that Odin may have been under the influence of hallucinogenic substances, and that this contributed to his disappearance. This interpretation suggests that Odin was disoriented or paranoid in the early hours of November 18th, possibly due to LSD, psilocybin, or some combination of drugs and fatigue. In this altered mental state, he may have acted irrationally, hiding his belongings, wandering aimlessly, or interpreting benign stimuli as threatening. This version of events sees the key decisions, including Odin's detour to the pier, the removal of his clothing, and perhaps even his entry into the water, as consequences of hallucination or fear. In an investigative segment aired by NRK, one interviewee recalled Odin saying in advance of the party that he and a friend had discussed trying LSD that night. A source close to the group claimed, Odin was curious, but it wasn't his scene. If he did take something, it would have been a first or second time, not a habit. According to police, they found no physical evidence of drug use, but no toxicology tests could be conducted, without a body. Odin's phone, which might have provided clues, had been turned off hours before and contained no messages indicating distress or intent. The behavior captured on surveillance footage, especially the brief moment when Odin breaks into a run for no apparent reason, has often been cited by those who believe a hallucinogenic experience was in play. Online commentators and drug experts have noted that such sudden changes in pacing, body language, and decisions to discard or hide personal items are not uncommon in high-dose psychedelic incidents. The theory doesn't depend on Odin intending to harm himself. Rather, it suggests that an altered perception may have led him into danger, such as entering the water voluntarily, seeking cover in a secluded location, or succumbing to exposure after wandering off. Still, some have questioned how far Odin could have traveled in such a state without being noticed, and why no trace of him was ever found, even after widespread search efforts in surrounding terrain. Number 3. Conflict and cover-up among friends. Suspicion toward the group of young men who last saw Odin has persisted from the earliest days of the investigation. Though the 5 friends were never named as suspects and consistently told police they parted ways with Odin around 5 a.m., speculation has lingered, fueled in part by an earlier confrontation. According to multiple unconfirmed accounts posted on forums and repeated in media interviews, one of the 5 young men had been involved in a heated dispute with Odin several weeks before his disappearance. The alleged argument involved a financial matter, possibly a debt, and reportedly escalated to threats of violence. In one version of the story, the same individual tried to confront Odin in a car, allegedly attempting to smash a window while Odin was inside. While these accounts were not officially verified by police, Ingunn Hagen, Odin's mother, acknowledged hearing about the threats. In a later interview, she said, "There are people who haven't told the whole story. That's clear to us. We've heard things, and I think the police have too, but not everything came out." This theory rests on the idea that a confrontation took place after the group left the hotel, and that something went wrong. If there was a fight, over money or some other grievance, the scenario could involve either a fatal injury or a panic-driven attempt to silence Odin. The belief is that if such an event happened, the others involved may have made a coordinated decision not to come forward. Supporters of this theory argue that the circumstances are too coincidental, that Odin went missing only hours after being with a group that included someone who had threatened him, and that his belongings being found later, hidden in 2 separate spots, points to intentional staging. Some believe the white station wagon seen near the pier later that morning may have initially been linked to this circle, although this was eventually ruled out. Critics of the theory point out that the group was repeatedly questioned, that their movements were largely confirmed by digital data, and that no physical evidence ever tied any of them to a crime. Still, the suspicion lingers. As one local commenter wrote on Facebook, "They were the last to see him. It's very suspicious how the hotel gang got off so easily." Number 4. Encounter with an unknown individual. Another explanation is that Odin may have come into contact with a stranger in the early hours of that morning, someone whose motives were unknown and whose actions turned violent. Whether an opportunistic attack, a robbery gone wrong, or a chance meeting with someone dangerous, this theory posits that Odin became the victim of foul play by a person or persons never identified. Trondheim is generally considered safe, but it's not immune to occasional incidents of violence, especially around nightlife hubs and the waterfront. On the same night Odin vanished, police responded to a disturbance in a nearby park, a brawl reportedly involving several young men. While there's no direct link between that altercation and Odin's case, it highlights that not all streets were quiet. This theory also draws on rumors, including talk of individuals with violent histories operating in or around the harbor, and speculation about people living on boats in the marina. Some have even mentioned the possibility that Odin was lured somewhere under false pretenses. What gives this theory traction is the total lack of evidence. If Odin was attacked and then disposed of in the water, or taken to another location, it could explain the absence of physical remains. But this also creates difficulty. No camera footage, no DNA, and no suspects. A crime committed by someone unknown would require remarkable precision, or sheer luck, to leave behind no clues whatsoever. Number 5. Intentional disappearance. A less frequently voiced but still considered possibility is that Odin deliberately left his life behind, walking away from everything and choosing not to return. The idea of a planned vanishing arises from the way his belongings were found, carefully hidden, not discarded or abandoned in haste. His phone, passport, and bank card were tucked beneath a pallet behind a warehouse wall. This has led some to wonder whether Odin staged his own disappearance and travelled elsewhere without being detected. There is, however, little in his background to support such a decision. He left behind all money, identification, and communication tools. He hadn't expressed dissatisfaction with his life, and friends and family saw no signs of withdrawal or emotional distress. He also had no known access to a vehicle or outside help, and there were no digital footprints indicating preparations or travel plans. Odin's family has rejected this theory. His father stated flatly he had no reason to run away. None. He had just started something new. He was looking ahead, and he would never abandon our dog, Alpha. Never. Despite that, a witness report surfaced days after his disappearance. A farmer in Mostermarka claimed to have seen a tall, blonde young man walking on a forest road around 8:15 a.m. on Monday, November 19th. The man gave a faint smile, then vanished into the woods. If the person seen was Odin, it could indicate he was alive 24 hours after vanishing. If it wasn't, the theory loses a key point of support. As a full escape scenario, the theory faces numerous logistical hurdles, but has not been formally ruled out. Number 6. Decision to end it. Finally, the possibility has been raised, cautiously and without formal designation, that Odin may have decided to end it. This theory is usually discussed in relation to the methodical way his items were left behind, and his final trajectory toward the fjord. The idea is that Odin may have experienced a moment of despair, possibly exacerbated by substances or stress, and entered the water deliberately. No note was found. No such intentions were ever voiced to family or friends. On the contrary, Odin was described as enthusiastic, loving, and a boy who never caused worry. His parents, teachers, and friends all insisted he had no history of mental health issues. Nevertheless, investigators included this possibility among the 4 main working theories. In statements, they used phrases like a self-chosen exit via the sea, suggesting it could not be discounted. Still, this theory remains one of the most contested. As Dan Jacobsen told one newspaper, people say you can never truly know someone's mind, but we know our son, and this was not him. These 6 theories represent the dominant narratives that have shaped the public and investigative understanding of Odin's disappearance. Each comes with its own implications and its own set of unanswered questions. In the next section, we step back from speculation and look at the facts through a structured lens. By applying the means, motive, and opportunity framework and considering the full weight of evidence, we will examine what most likely happened to Odin Jacobsen. What most likely happened. When someone vanishes without warning, no witness, no sound, no clear cause, the mind rushes to fill the vacuum with possibilities. In the case of Odin Andre Hagen Jacobsen, every imaginable theory has been explored. Conflict, conspiracy, accident, even escape. But after years of investigation and exhaustive media coverage, the evidence points not toward foul play or grand design, but toward a much quieter explanation. What most likely happened to Odin was the result of confusion, isolation, and a moment of vulnerability. A tragic accident set in motion by an altered state of mind. Odin was last seen alive at 6:01 a.m., walking alone on Pier 11 near the Trondheim harbour. By that point, he had been awake all night, had consumed alcohol, and, according to multiple sources, had likely experimented with a hallucinogenic substance, possibly LSD. Friends later told podcast interviewers and police that Odin had mentioned wanting to try acid that weekend. Though not confirmed through toxicology, no body has ever been recovered. This claim is consistent with his behavior on surveillance footage: aimless pacing, sudden sprinting, clutching his bag as if protecting it, and repeatedly glancing over his shoulder. Experts on psychedelic-related psychosis describe this as textbook behavior. Inexperienced users, especially those sleep-deprived or anxious, can experience intense paranoia, sensory misinterpretation, and irrational fear, notes one Norwegian drug education source. They may hide, flee, or discard personal items for reasons that make sense only to them in the moment. Odin's last known actions align closely with that pattern. The hidden items. The discovery of Odin's phone, passport, bank card, and bus card, all carefully tucked behind a warehouse wall, supports the theory that he placed them there himself. Later analysis of security footage confirmed that at 6:01 a.m., Odin was captured passing the very spot where the items were found. They weren't stolen. They weren't dumped in haste. They were placed with care. This detail undermines most foul play theories and instead suggests that Odin, in a confused or frightened state, was deliberately cutting ties, perhaps hiding from a perceived threat that didn't exist. That same morning, pieces of his clothing and one of his shoes were found in a bag near a white container. The second shoe was discovered nearby. Police believe these were also placed by Odin before he disappeared from camera range entirely. A deadly environment. Where Odin went next is unknown, but where he was, the edge of the fjord, is enough to draw a likely conclusion. The water around Bratura Pier is deep, dark, and cold. In November, the temperature can cause cold shock within seconds. If Odin slipped, misjudged a step, or entered the water thinking he was escaping something, hypothermia would have rendered him helpless in under a minute. His father, Dan Jacobsen, has consistently said Odin was a strong swimmer, but strength alone cannot stop the effects of cold water on the body, especially if the person is disoriented or under the influence. No splash was heard, no cry reported. But that hour of the morning is quiet, and the industrial noise of the harbour could mask even a desperate sound. Search teams combed the area extensively, yet no body was found. Still, Norwegian fjords are vast, and many drowning victims are never recovered, especially when strong currents or underwater debris are involved. Distractions and red herrings. In April 2019, months after the disappearance, burned clothes belonging to Odin were found near Jonsvatnet Lake, 20 kilometers from Trondheim. This discovery briefly revived the theory of foul play, until a man came forward and confessed. He had found the items at the pier and burned them in a panic, afraid of becoming involved. Though his actions were bizarre, investigators found no connection between him and Odin. He was charged with tampering, but not with any violent act. The burned items were ultimately a red herring, confusing but unrelated to Odin's fate. Another misleading clue came from a farmer who claimed to see someone matching Odin's description walking in Mostamarka the day after he vanished. The figure was never identified. Without additional sightings, the tip remains unconfirmed and difficult to reconcile with Odin's known movements. Dismissing other theories. The theory that Odin was harmed by his friends, one of whom reportedly threatened him weeks earlier, never gained traction with investigators. All 5 were interviewed multiple times. Their digital footprints aligned with their statements, and no forensic evidence tied them to a crime. A stranger attack seems equally unlikely. No injuries, DNA, or signs of struggle were ever found. If someone had harmed Odin, the careful stashing of his documents makes little sense. Attackers typically do not go to such lengths to conceal a victim's belongings neatly and out of sight. The idea that Odin ran away is contradicted by the circumstances. He left behind money, ID, his phone, and showed no signs of wanting to escape his life. His parents called this impossible. He had made plans, he was close to his family, and he was deeply attached to his dog. Odin would never leave her behind, said his father. As for the possibility that he ended it himself, this remains difficult to prove or disprove. There was no note, no evidence of depression. If anything, his actions seem reactive rather than fatalistic, panicked, not resigned. And while police acknowledged this possibility, they never formally classified the case as self-inflicted. The simplest explanation. In the absence of a body, no explanation will ever feel complete. But the weight of evidence, physical, behavioral, psychological, points to a drug-induced accident. Odin likely took a hallucinogen that night. Hours later, he was alone, confused, and wandering a potentially dangerous waterfront. He hid his things. He may have imagined danger or felt a desperate need to get away. He may have entered the water voluntarily, thinking it offered safety, or simply slipped while in a confused state. No one else needed to be involved. No complex plot. No unknown attacker. Just one young man in the wrong state of mind, at the wrong place, at the wrong time. A quiet ending. When the case was shelved in 2023, police attorney Hans Wang said it clearly. The investigation has not given us any concrete indication that the disappearance was due to a criminal act. That absence of evidence is not proof of nothing, but in this case it aligns with a straightforward, tragic conclusion. Odin Jacobsen died that morning due to an unintentional series of events, likely influenced by a drug, cold air, and fear. His story remains a devastating reminder of how quickly control can slip away, and how silence can stretch for years when answers lie just beneath the surface.